I know that you have very specific ways of actually being a lie detector.
That's right.
So, you're on a date.
Yeah.
How do you know when someone's lying?
Okay, so let's talk about the science of lie detection. The average person detects lies with about 54% accuracy. And that's the average person. A truth wizard, the best of the best lie spotters, get up to 80%. So everything we're talking about today is probably not going to get you to 100, right? So we're trying to get anywhere above 54%. Any percent we can get back is better. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want people to keep in mind, and this is a weird one, is something called the Pollyanna effect. I think it's because when we assume the worst, we get into a very negative mindset and we mistake nervousness for guilt. We mistake shame or embarrassment, which is a very honest emotion, for deception. And so the very first thing is, on your dates, assume the best. In your negotiations and interviews, assume the best. Look for good in people. Assume truth. And then we'll talk about the steps. The nice thing about lie detection is once you know what to look for, you can learn it and keep it in the back of your head. You don't have to actively go into it. So that's the very first thing, is when you go to your dates, assume the best. Seek truth. And that's kind of a nice way to start too. Yes, that's the very first thing. It's a good way of thinking about lie detection, I think.
Yeah.
The second thing is, this is a general way to think about lie detection, is something called congruence. So when we think about people, they're using lots of mode of communication. So right now, I'm talking to you with my whole body, right? Like I'm angling my body at you, I'm leaning forward when I'm excited, you're nodding at me, I see the nods back. I'm using my verbal communication, my vocal communication. Liars have extra load. In other words, they're not just communicating back and forth free-flowing. They're trying to keep a lie straight in their head. They're trying to convince you of the lie, and they want to see if you believe the lie back to them. So what happens for liars is they get incongruent. So you're on a date, or you're in an interview or negotiation, and it's going like this, and we're flowing, and it's great. And then all of a sudden, you notice that they are saying they're really happy, but there's no happiness on their face. So all of a sudden, the verbal track misaligns with the nonverbal. So someone says, yeah, I really love this job, and I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to work here. And yeah, I just have been thinking about it for a long. Now you can start to see that I'm saying the right things. My verbal are saying you love the job, but I turn away, I look away, my face falls, I stop nodding, I stop smiling, I use a lot less movement. That is an incongruence. That's getting us into where lie detection begins.
Oh, okay, so I've got a question there.
Yeah.
Because you said it earlier about shame and guilt. How do you know that they're not saying it because they're embarrassed, because they've got shame, because they've got guilt around it, and so they can't look you in the eye, right? They're embarrassed, they don't have the confidence, that's another big one.
100%.
So in those moments, how do you know that it's not that?
Yes, okay, so this is one of the reasons why I teach so much about confidence, is because I know that a lack of confidence can be mistaken as a lie.
Right.
And I realized when I was doing this research, I saw, oh my goodness, the lying cues, the deception cues are extremely similar to the anxious cues. So when I go into a situation and I'm anxious or nervous, that not only makes me look less confident, it actually makes me look like a liar. So congruence is the very first thing, which is the basis of lie detection, is that liars have so many things they're trying to keep straight that they forget or they leak out their truth. And so that means they're saying one thing, but their body or their voice tone shows another. So as lie detectors, the most important thing we can do is look for, wait a minute, something just changed. I just saw an incongruence, and as truth tellers, we need to make sure we're absolutely congruent. So you asked a really important question about how do we know if someone's nervous or if they're telling a lie. And that is actually the very first step of lie detection. The very first step of lie detection is the most important step. And it's the step to make sure that we are not going to get a false positive. False positives keep me up at night, right? The worst thing you could possibly do is assume someone's lying when they're not. And all the research, there is a couple steps that we can take to hopefully have not as many false positives. So step number one is called baselining. So baselining is looking at how someone acts, sounds, and speaks when they're telling the truth. So when we're interacting, right, the very first thing you want to do is take a pulse of how someone looks and sounds when they're speaking the truth. So at the beginning of a date, it's, so where are you from? People don't usually lie about that, right? So how was your day? What did you do today? What do you do? All those questions that we use to build rapport are actually perfect baselining questions. And all you're trying to do here is just take like a mental snapshot, right? So like your baseline. So my baseline of you, hopefully, and by the way, I highly recommend writing some of these down, is you're a nodder. So
I am.
You nod, right? Perfect. That's part of your baseline. I know that when you're building rapport, when you're telling the truth, you're a nodder, right? So great. Did you notice what else she did? Okay, so one is she lifts this toe. Yeah. So when you're talking, you like to lift this toe up. Oops, I messed up my...
Notice I do that.
Yeah. So as an emphasis, you'll often lift this toe. Okay. So that's good to know. You notice anything else? Okay. So you tend to keep your hands relaxed. You tend to have like an up face. So you tend to smile a lot. You also will lean forward, right? You're very relaxed. Okay. So this is Lisa in truth, not anxious. That's the very first step. You also, when you're speaking, you have a very excited voice. You match my volume. Okay, so that's how you look and how you sound. That's step number one. So when I'm doing like really wanting to understand how someone behaves when they lie, I literally write this down. I literally write down some of their nonverbal tells. I notice that when this is how you sit comfortably, right? With your hands like this or like this at rest. Okay. Step two is called a nervous baseline. A nervous baseline is how someone looks when they're nervous. And this is the most important for protecting against false positives. So if you really want to know how someone lies, you want to make sure that you know their nervous tells. And everyone has nervous tells. Nervous tells are different than lying tells. So for example, if you were to ask a question like, so it's been a really hard week for you, so tell me all about that. Oh, it's been horrible. You know that their nervous tell is touching their face. So when I get nervous, when I've talked about being nervous, I tend to like touch my chest here. In fact, I get in trouble because I touch my mic. So I notice that's my own nervous tell. So you would know that when I'm nervous, I tend to self-touch. I self-touch my face, I self-touch my stomach, I self-touch around my mic area. Do you know what your nervous tells are? Do you know what you try to stifle when you're nervous?
I don't, which is interesting. Well, let me think about that. I don't play with, so if you see me, and here's actually the thing I was about to say, if you see me play with my hair on set, it's normally because I'm like, is it poofy and I can't see, so I play with it. But when I'm nervous, Tom even said, I twirl my hair, and I was like, I twirl my hair? And so now he's like, why are you twirling? Like he'll spot it, but he was the one that told me.
Right, okay, so that would be a really important part of your baseline. So if I notice that you just happened to play with your hair on set, that would be a part of your baselining, because that means that you weren't doing it for any reason. You weren't doing it. It was literally just habit, right? I also do the same. I fix my hair. I futz with my hair. For me, that's part of my baseline. So when I asked you the question about your nervous baseline, I actually got to see your nervous baseline.
Oh shit! Did you? Did I bite my lip?
Yeah.
I wondered that. The funny thing is, I was like, what's my nervous baseline?
Can we rewind it back
like,
and like show what you did?
Like,
do you know what your nervous tells are? Do you know what you try to stifle when you're nervous? So I was a trick question, I apologize.
No, I love it. I'm so impressed that you were able to trick me.
Okay, so I tricked you by asking because I knew that would make you nervous. If I want to know someone's nervous baseline, the quickest and easiest way is to ask them what they do when they're nervous. Any kind of question that's going to produce a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of anxiety, you're going to see their nervous baseline. So those are the first two. The third step, and this is the longest of the steps, is looking for what I call red flags. So these are the statistical cues to deceit. So research has looked into deception to find out, statistically speaking, what do liars most often do? Statistically speaking, when people lie, they touch their nose. Okay, now this doesn't mean that when people are lying every time, and here's why. They've actually found, this is crazy research, they found that we have a certain kind of cartilage in our nose that gets increased blood flow when we're being deceptive. And so Pinocchio's nose, they think, Pinocchio, you know how he lies, his nose grows? They think that the animators got the idea because actually when we lie, our nose tends to itch. This is actually a chemical thing that happens in our body. I know, it's so weird. So they think that the idea for like, how would you come up with an idea that every time a boy lies, his nose grows? That some people can feel it. I'm curious if anyone watching can feel that. Put it below the comments. There's a small percent, whenever I teach this at live audiences, that people go, oh my God, that happens to me. They have friends who play poker and they say that when they bluff, their nose feels like it's on fire.
Oh my God.
So what's interesting about this is that it's statistical. So not every time you touch your nose, you're lying. So if I were talking to you during an interview and you weren't touching your nose at all, and then I asked you nervous questions and you didn't touch your nose at all, but all of a sudden, during a question that I was worried that you were lying about, on a date, maybe talking about your ex, in an interview, maybe talking about your ex-boss, with a friend talking about, oh yeah, I must have misplaced that. It must have gone to spam, right? Like the email that we all tell, right, to friends. And all of a sudden that is called a red flag, and that is step number 3. Step 3 is looking for sudden red flags, sudden differences in what we didn't see in the baseline, nervous baseline, or sudden differences with incongruence. So incongruents are, I say that I'm happy, but I show no happiness. Or I say, yeah, I'm so angry at him, but I show no anger at all. Or, this is an egregious one, seeing a difference in nonverbal and verbal. So one of my favorite ones that I talk about in the book is, you ask someone, so did you see that horrible thing that happened? And they shake their head yes. In our cultures, this means yes, but they say no. Oh, no, I didn't. It's weird, right?
Freaking weird.
It's so hard. It should actually like elevate your heart rate.
Yeah, like it felt weird.
That's why I trust the body, is because it's hard to be incongruent. It takes more energy. I want you to keep in mind when you see something like that, when you see someone who's saying yes, you have to know that something is working on overdrive, unless that was in their baseline. So step number 3 is all looking for inconsistencies and red flags. Here are a couple common ones. There are 30 that we list out. So a couple really easy ones is nose touching, right? That's an easy one. Incongruent nodding. Another one is liars want to hold things back. He lip pursed. He pressed his lips together because he wanted to like withhold the lie. So liars often want to withhold because they know lying gets them into trouble. They also are very nervous and they're trying to self-soothe. So they typically touch their face, and there are 3 areas of the face that they touch: eyes, nose, and mouth. And research has found this. So they found that when we are lying, we want to like block out the lie. So we eye block. So when liars are lying, they'll be like, yeah, you know, it's just been really hard, and they'll futz at their eyes because they also have, they want to block it out with a high blink rate. So Britney Spears, some of her early interviews, when she's asked really hard questions, all of a sudden she'll, I just really want to, I don't know, I just want to talk about that, but the reason that I'm talking about it, and she has this like rapid blink rate. And that is because we are trying to block it out. And the last one is mouth touch. Liars, like when I asked my daughter, did you take the cookie? She'll go, no.